In the name of Almighty, the most gracious and the most merciful. In this session, we'll be discussing about what is a research design. I hope you have gone through the sessions. Good to see your works you have done, the writings which you have sent on research design. Hope you we have must have got a basic idea of what is research design. So let's look little deeper into what is the research design and what are the types of research design and so on. In this session, we'll be just looking at the introduction of research design, and in detail we'll discuss about how a research design should be, because for your dissertation you will be framing your research design. Once you have completed your problem and you are ready with your hypothesis and you have framed your objectives for the research, like what are the things you have to achieve through the research, what are the research questions you need to answer through the research. Once if it is clear, we'll go and design a research design. So to begin with, what is a research design? To simply explain what is the research design, imagine you have a goal. Fine. Like you are looking forward to reaching somewhere. You are here at this point of time, and then you are moving in a direction of your goal. Your goal is here somewhere. Fine. To reach this particular destination, you might have a number of ways. One may go like this, and from there here, and then reach your destination. And another way will be like this. Fine. Fine. And there will be numerous ways in which you can reach your destination. Fine. There will be one way which is straight, direct, going to your destination. There will be numerous ways. Always, whatever goal you have, whatever things you have to achieve, there will be a number of ways in which you can achieve it or reach that particular goal. So through research design, what we have to do is we have to analyze and find, systematically, logically, fine, keeping the previous research evidences, we have to analyze and find a best way possible. That is what we do in research design. For example, you have got these many ways to achieve that, and this way is particularly like it may take more time. Fine. There'll be another way in which may take this may take less time than this one, but this is like this is utilizing too many resources, and this may be a very simple straightforward time, less time consuming and less resource consuming way of doing it. Fine. So like we analyze each way and we select one, like maybe this one is feasible for us because this is consuming very less time and less energy, less resources. Fine. So we may choose this way as our ultimate way of reaching this particular destination. Similarly, when we are forming a research design, what you are doing is, in order to answer your research question, like imagine this is your research question. Fine. In order to reach to that particular conclusion which you want, this is the answer or solution you get out of that particular research. Fine. In order to answer your research question, you are engaging in this analysis process of analyzing or comparing various methods of reaching at your solution and choosing one particular method which is really feasible for you in various aspects. What are those aspects? We'll be discussing in this particular chapter. Fine. So this process of constructing a plan for your research, this is a plan, right? You have got a question and you have to find the answer, so you plan how are you going to reach that particular destination. That particular thing is called as research design. Fine. Theoretically speaking, research design can be arrangement of conditions for collection and analysis of data. Like in a research, a very major thing we do is collecting data. Whatever research it may be, scientific research, social scientific research, data is a very major thing, right? So how are you going to collect the data, and how are you going to analyze the data? These are like very major two questions which should be answered in your research question. Fine. And then it goes again to aim to combine relevance to the research purpose with economy in procedure. Economy in procedure is what we were discussing about. Fine. Time, less time consuming. For example, let's take your dissertation work. You got very less time to do this research. For example, 1 year is the thing allotted, but we take around 6 months for planning the research. Fine. And 6 months for the implementation. Like, let's take 3 4 months or 5 months. 5 months for planning and 5 months for implementation. That is how this thing is divided. That is a very limited time you have for your dissertation. So with this particular limited amount of time, how are you going to do a research? So it should be, economy should be there, the time limit and the resources, very limited resources. But particularly at this point of time, we have got a very limited resources, so we have to plan our dissertation work accordingly. It's not that you cannot do it, but you can do it, but we have got very limited, like online resources you can use. You may not be able to possibly, go and directly collect data from the field, but you might have online resources to do it. So let's make use of it. And that is a plan which we are going to make when we are actually doing uh, you know framing a research design. Fine. Next, it's a kind of, it gives a conceptual structure to your entire study. Imagine you are going to start a project. Fine. So before starting a project, you will spend much time in actually structuring that project or designing that project. That's what we are doing here. We are giving a conceptual structure to the entire study which is going to be conducted, and it can also be called as a blueprint for data collection. You first make a plan, a blueprint for a blueprint. Why is this called as a blueprint? Because you must have seen blueprints, right? Blueprints of structures, blueprints of questions, blueprints of projects and all. So blueprints is something, which gives you a detailed explanation of each component present in that particular thing. Fine. So this research design must talk about each component in the research. It should not leave alone any components, like, we will see on the way, or while doing the data collection we'll decide how to do it. No, nothing of that sort is going to happen when it comes to a blueprint. A blueprint is like, a pictorial representation giving or discussing or analyzing all the aspect in this particular thing. Hope you are aware of a blueprint, right? So here research design is going to be a blueprint for us. Fine. With that blueprint, anybody can actually carry out the similar research which you are doing. Fine. So that details must be there in the research. It should not be, very small thing, general thing. It should be elaborate in nature, and it is an outline to the research. Like, earlier I was giving you an example that, there are n number of ways in which you can actually do a research, or reach a conclusion or a destination, right? So similarly, even when you are going ahead with your research, you will find that, that research can be conducted in numerous possibilities. Fine. Whenever there is a numerous possibilities, there is a chance that our researcher might actually wander around or deviate from the actual point of research. Fine. So it is very much important that, a researcher stick to their own, course of action and not deviate from it. So what happens is, through research design we are actually marking a boundary for doing the research. Like, I'm not going to do much anything more than this. Especially, while collecting data and all, we decide that, we are going to collect from this particular amount of people. We don't just wander around and collect from anyone whom we get. Okay. And even while selecting the sample, we have a particular criteria. We decided, on this basis only I'm going to choose people. Fine. In probabilistic research, in quantitative studies and all, we actually decide even the uh, sample units. Each units is are already decided. This person, this person, this person I'm going to collect data from. That is actually decided when it comes to kind of research design. Everything, every possible thing in that research is actually designed. We actually mark an outline for conducting a research. It's a very basic idea about research design. Moving ahead, a research design, what are the things it must comprise? If you take a Kotari's text, you must have seen that the first page gives you a few questions to be answered. Fine. The design actually must happen. You just when you are making a research design, just take these questions which are there, and then try to see whether your research design answers all these questions. If your research design answers all these questions, then it is a very good research design. For example, what are those questions? Like, what is the study about? Must be there in your research design. And why is the study being made? Where will the study be carried out? What type of data required? Where can be the required data be found? What period of time will the study include? What will be the sample design? What technique of data collection be used? How will the data be analyzed? And last, in what style the report be prepared? These are the very basic questions you must ask once you are preparing the research design, or once you have completed your research design and you are seeing or analyzing whether your research design is very good or not. Just see what are the questions being asked here. Like, one thing is about what is the study about. We usually student include this thing. There is no much effort in it, but this part is actually, I have seen most of the students, they miss out this part. I don't understand why, but mostly, some people, they feel that this is not required area or so. Like, why is the study being made? We don't usually answer this question. Fine. We just start from our own idea and we go ahead with it. This is a reason why we are going for a problem presentation, basically, to answer this question. Why? Because most of the questions, most of the research which is conducted in India, if you see, it lacks practicability, and also it lacks implication value. What is implication value? Implication value is like, you have found something new, and how much it is necessary in the society or in the basic functioning of human being. If you say, most of the research being conducted in India are having very less implication value. That's why globally the rating of that particular research is being very, very low. Fine. You must have read about this, and there is a basic concern which is going on in the Indian research forums regarding this particular thing, the implication value. Why there is less implication value in the research being conducted in India? One thing is, that research is not answering this question. Why is the study being made? If a researcher asks himself or herself this question, that research will be modified and made in a way which will have a high implication value. It will be very practical in nature. The findings will be very relevant. Fine. Which is very important in this particular time. Fine. I have seen your problems. In your problems, most of you have come up with research related to corona ongoing scenario, and the current issues which are going on. That's very good, actually. So that actually shows that you are working on this particular question. Why is the study being made? Fine. Once you are very clear about why are you going to study this, you will design your research in that particular manner. Fine. And next is, where will study be carried out, is very commonly found in all the research. And what type of data required? Here few of us are not so very clear about the data required for that particular research. In order to understand the data required, you must have an idea about even the statistical part of what are you going to get out of the data. Fine. So we'll discuss that in detail, and very importantly, in order to make your research very effective, you must understand the statistical part of it. Most of the researcher in India, especially in the field of psychology, we depend on statisticians and other experts, technical experts for this particular data related issues. For example, especially in quantitative studies. So what happens there is, the researcher himself or herself is not very well equipped in data management, or does not even understand the data which the researcher collected. What happens is, the intention of the researcher and the nature of data actually differs in a very large scale, that leads to many issues later. Fine, that leads to a major issue wherein, the intention of the researcher or the major objective of the researcher may not be achieved completely. There'll be a kind of difference being found in these two aspects. That's a very major issue we have. So a researcher in the field of psychology also must be very well competent in the field of statistics, or basic computation must be very clear to us. Only then we'll be answered to, we'll be expert in the data, what type of data required, you will be very much aware of. And where can the data required data be found? That's like a relevant question which is being answered. Period of time, it's like mostly for qualitative studies, wherein you have to mention the year, uh, which period you are going to cover. Even for quantitative studies, the latest is the best. Fine, instead of going into a historical analysis. Of course it has its own relevance, but it depends on the research question being asked, or the objective of the study. What will the sample design be? We always go to it and we are good at it. What techniques of data collection we used? We need to find and analyze and decide. How will the data be analyzed? Again, the statistical part. In what style the report be prepared? Fine. We have got a design already for this, which is APF format, but still, how are you going to analyze, especially for qualitative studies and all? There are numerous ways, and you have to select an unbiased and with a very elaborate way for this. These are the questions, once you have completed your research design, especially, when you are working a proposal, research proposal. Once you have completed the research proposal, come back and get the book of textbook of Kotari, and just go through these questions, and just you yourself analyze, whether you have covered all these questions in your research proposal or not. Moving swiftly on, a research design must comprise all these four elements. When you're trying to answer the questions which were there in the previous slide, you basically go and make a research design, and you will have these four components in it. Obviously we'll have it. First thing is, sampling design, which deals with the method of selecting, and how are you going to choose those data which are required for the study. Fine, that is called a sampling design. You have to give a very detailed design for the sample. Fine, first you have to decide which will be your population, and how are you going to choose sample from your population, and sampling technique, what are the techniques you are going to use in order to select that particular sample. These are the question you'll be answering in the sampling design. Next is, observational design, which is related to observations. What are the observations are being made? Fine, it's not only talking about the observational research, but when you even when you are collecting the data, what happens is, in psychological research we engage in particular kind of observation. You must have done it in your practicals, experimental psychology and testing and all. We don't simply ask the subject to do go ahead with your experiment. No, we also sit there and start observing the person who is filling out that questionnaire, or doing some particular experiment using some tools, right? That observational data is very very important when it comes to psychological research. So how are you going to do it? That an observational design must be made. And we were discussing about observational research. there also design is a very important thing. I will discuss about observational design. I didn't find this in any of your problem or your designs. We'll discuss that in case if you find observational research you're going to conduct, then we'll discuss that in detail, because I've got a very good experience of doing observational research. Next is statistical design, very prominent part of that particular research design. Here you will decide, what are the analysis, should be made. And I was talking about the data. You must be very well aware, even before you start, you must be aware of what type of data you are going to get out of these things. So we make a statistical design in order to answer these things. How many items are to be observed, and how the information and data gathered be analyzed. That is very important. Especially, the sample size we talk about more often. The sample size must be, adequate. I will not say it should be less or more. It should be adequate for the research question. Fine, and it should go along with the population size. Fine, that kind of designs will be covered in statistical design. The next one is operational design. How are you going to practically implement the research, techniques which are going to be used, and the procedures, specifically, sampling, statistical observation research, in all these designs, what are the procedures you are going to follow. Fine, that will be covered in the operational design. These are the four things, designs, which should be there in your research design. Next part is about purpose of research design. Why are we having a research design at first in our research? Through analyzing various text references, I just summed up 3 points for understanding the purpose. It's like major purpose of research design. Why should we have a research design in our research? First is maximum information at minimum cost. I was explaining it to you through that diagram which we made earlier, the beginning of the lecture. Maximum information we need, right, to answer that question. Whatever maximum information we can collect with a particular, limited amount of time and resources we have. For that we need a research design. Fine, it's not possible to do it without having a design. Second is objective, valid, and economic research. In order to construct objective, valid, and economic construct. Objective, why objective? It is, we know very well, science of course deals with objectivity and validity. These are the basic two things which actually describes or explains that our research is actually scientific in nature. Fine, these two aspects must be there in any research. So, in order to construct a research which is objective and valid in nature and also economic in nature, you must have a research design. Otherwise, it's not possible to do it. Third one, and most important, acts as a control mechanism. Fine, you will find, when you're going to do a research, when you're going through a research, you will find numerous issues, and whenever you face with an issue, you will actually move ahead, in another direction. But it always happens, especially in dissertation work. I have seen, after completing the proposal, even while doing the data collection, students will come and ask, such as, shall I change my problem, or shall I change my proposal, entire proposal? Shall I change my area of research? Why this is happening is, we while doing the research in the practical part, you find numerous ways and you try to wander. Fine, go from one topic to another topic, jump from here to there. That always happens with any researchers. So once your design is very well, placed, and you have designed your research, you know your limitations. What are your limitations? You have analyzed it. Fine, and with those limitations you have actually constructed a wall around you. Yeah, these are the things which I am going to concentrate upon in my research. So once it is done, then it is very easy for you to complete the research. So that is what we are going to do in a research design, and that actually acts as a control mechanism for you. Fine, in order to not deviate from the particular aspect, whatever you are covering in the research, this acts as a control mechanism. Fine. Next, quickly moving on to the criteria for the research design. What are the criteria which should be there in a research design? You may analyze your research design even using whether your research design fulfills these criteria or not. First thing, capability to answer research questions adequately. Fine. The research design must go along with the objectives or the what are the things the researcher wants to find. Most of the time what happens is, the research question will be in one direction, and the research design will be in another direction. There will be many problems arising in the research design. A particular design may not be very much compatible to answer the particular research question being asked in that research. Fine. So what happens is, there will be incompatibility arising. Fine. That is actually a weak research design. Example for a weak research design. We can see numerous examples for this. For example, if you are trying to find, intelligence is one of the variable you have. Okay, let's take intelligence as a dependent variable you have. While going and conducting intelligence, as a very important variable in your research, you must be measuring intelligence. In that, you may take out components which are actually related to intelligence and not related to intelligence. On that basis, you may presume to select groups on the basis of that. What happens is, once you presume variables which are not related to intelligence, you may get negative results, like you may get results which are not exactly compatible for the question being asked. um, that may arise, that shows that you have got a weak research design. Like, to put it simply, you want to find a difference between male and female. Mostly, our students do this, male female differences. Fine. But the that will be very prominent part. Male female differences will be very prominent part. Or, in order to differentiate, or divide that group, we may use this gender as a criteria, male and female, and we presume that all male are equal and all female are equal. But whereas in that particular research, the differentiation of male and female may not be a very important component and may not yield very good result. Fine. So that shows a weak research design. Just, on the basis of gender you are divided. Fine. But the variable and the gender are not at all connected. In that case, that shows that you've got a very weak research design. So the research design must be capable of answering the research questions adequately. So there should not be any weakness in the research design. That's a very prominent part. That's a very important criteria. Second is control of variables. uh, Whatever variables, especially extraneous variable we were talking about. I hope you remember the example I gave for extraneous variable, like intelligence. In that particular uh, example, I was talking about intelligence affecting learning capacity. Fine. So we need to control that extraneous variable, otherwise the entire research is going to be a flop show, right? So similarly, in every research, especially experimental research, we will find this variables are there which needs to be controlled in order to reach to that conclusion. So our design should be in a very good manner, which must answer, or which must actually explain the um, what are the variables needs to be controlled, and it must control those variables in a very effective manner. I hope you remember that example which we discussed when we are discussing about variables, extraneous variables on top. I told you, like, there are certain procedures through which you actually control extraneous variable. What are the procedures? The main procedure is, this research design. Fine. How you control these variables, extraneous variables? You control it through the research design. Fine. No, not any other ways. So that procedures which we are discussing, like dividing them into two different groups, and giving allotting one particular kind of condition to one group, and allotting another condition to next group. Fine. That these procedure, this entire, deciding these procedures are what we are going to do when it comes to a research design. Fine. So this entire thing, how are you going to plan that experiment? That is what is we are going to do in a research design. Fine. So we need to we the major criteria is to control variables. Okay, to control of variables uh, we need to our research design must actually control variables. Otherwise it's going to be like we are going to mix up with all the variables and come up with some kind of an experiment which is not actually we are intended for. Next is generalizability must be there. When you talk about generalizability, we come back to the discussion of why actually are we conducting this entire research at first. Fine. So our objective will always be like, in order to answer those particular questions, right, which are there, or are finding solution to some problems which are actually arising in the society, right? So when you talk about these problems being answered, uh, it must be for a larger, group, right? It should not be for a very small group of people. Like for example, you have conducted a research with only students of Viras. Fine. So your research will of course answer only to those 100 students, right? Only 100 students who were part of your research question will be answering their problems. It will not cover a larger community, right? But a good research or a very normally placed research will answer each unit in that particular society. Fine. Everything, the population, it may not be like answering only to that particular sample. So with this particular sample you must be answering the entire population, right? That is called as generalizability. Fine. You must be, I hope you are aware of this term generalizability. Like once you find something, how are you going to generalize the finding to the entire population? Because most of this research which we are going to conduct, not most, almost every research we are going to conduct are going to be based on sample, right? So when you are conducting a research with the sample, whether those findings which you got through analyzing the sample, collecting data from the sample, whether this can be generalized to the entire population or not, that is called as generalizability. Fine. So a major criteria for a research design or a good research design is that your research design must have generalizability. Fine. Whatever you found must be actually answerable to the or generalized to the entire population. This is where it is more important for us to have a probability sampling technique and non-probability sampling technique. You must know the difference and you must know how are you going to select from these two. Fine. When you have got a probability sampling and statistical procedure also, probabilistic statistical procedures and non-probabilistic, both are going to be very much different. So which one are you going to use in your research? That will actually answer whether your research is going to be generalized or not. Fine. So we'll look into that in detail. uh, I hope we will wind up this session here. We have discussed the basics of research design, fine, very basic fundamentals of research design you can call. You have gone through the materials. I hope I have explained those materials in detail. In case if you have any questions, you can ask me. In next session, we'll go deeper and we'll discuss various research designs. You may find these things very confusing at the beginning, but once you go through the content and once you listen to these lectures, and third most important thing, when you ask questions, wherever you find this being confused, you can ask me. Then we will discuss those things in detail, and it's very easy to understand. Once you get the basics, that's why I took much time on the basics. Fine. So once it is clear, you will have a very good research design in your dissertation and as a researcher. Thank you so much. Looking forward to your questions. Thank you.